Hi everyone, it's great to have Alan Powell here from the British Distillers Alliance, who's going to give us some updates on what's been going on. I think it's fair to say, Alan, that a lot has been going on, not just in the last weeks, but in the last few days.
Yeah, the last few days. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, David. Yeah, there's been a lot going on, and it's really happened with the mini budget last week, where it's quite a surprise, really, that the alcohol duty review responses by the government to responses to the industry, to the original consultation documents, and the government proposals all came out, and also the draft bill to be for a new Alcoholic Duties Act. So a heck of a lot came out all at once to be considered very quickly. In fact, the next stage next week, there are workshops on where we progress this, the rates and things like the small brewers relief and small producers relief, because that's going to be a producers relief rather than brewers relief for everyone who is eligible below 8.5%. And there's going to be the relief for drafts in large pack, effectively. That's all next week. And yesterday we had a joint alcohol tobacco consultative group meeting, which is a high-level meeting between industry and HMRC, in which other matters, which are very good news for the industry, came out. But first of all, if we go back to the alcohol duty review, there's not much has changed for the spirits regimes from the last time. And if I just do a recap, is that there's going to be just 4 bands of alcohol duty, and a rate per band that will be applicable per the alcoholic strength for each within each band for each product. And there's a band that starts at less than 3.5% ABV. So there isn't a 1.2%. Anything below 1.2% or 1.2% is not treated as being dutiable. So really we're saying at 1.2 to 3.5, less than 3.5 will be dutiable, and every product, bar cider, will have the same rate. So if you're a spirits producer, you get the same rate as everybody else at that, below that strength. Cider is weird because it gets a very, very low rate of duty all the way through the rates, very low rate of duty. There's a next band that comes up at 3.5 to less than 8.5, and that's really the middle band. And any product that's in there will get roughly the same rate as every other product. So spirits isn't discriminated against anymore. So you can produce, maybe an RTD at 6%, 7%. You don't pay the full rate of duty on it at spirits rate. You pay a rate in that band that everybody pays. Beer gets a slightly reduced rate, but we won't quibble over that. The next band is 8.5, not exceeding 22. Again, spirits will bear the same rate of duty, say wine, and nearly the same low rate of duty as beer. That's good if you're making a double gin and tonic in a can RTD, say 12% or whatever, I don't know. That will get a slightly lower rate of duty than you pay at the moment, were you to make it as a premix from your main product. Then above 22%, then it's the full rate for everything. So at 22% and above, you pay the rate in that band, which is the spirits rate in effect. So that your full strength product at 40% or 37.5% will pay what are currently £28.74 per litre. Below 22%, the rates will be lower. So that's good news. That was what was always in the pipeline. And so we've nothing to quibble about that. That's good news. There isn't two things that we aren't going to get without fight is a small producer's rate for a product above 8.5%. The small producer's rate will be set at a certain level. I think it's 4,500 hectolitres. I can't remember. Yeah, 4,500 hectolitres. And there will not be, because obviously full strength spirits will not be about 8.5, it just won't work. And the reason for that, the reason that small distillers, effectively, small spirits producers, have been excluded is because apparently, because it's a success story, it doesn't need supporting. That's the wording I got from speaking to HMCE head of this project. The Treasury and the government say, oh, well, you don't need economies of scale because you're doing well. Now, that is quite a shallow response to what may be a more complicated, if you like, calculation formula. We will go back on it, and the industry does need to go back on it. But the point I put to HMRC is that, look, the small brewers were in the same position when they got small brewers relief. They didn't get it based on an economic reason. They got it based upon professional enmity between people working in different departments. And small rates for beer was brought in because the Treasury person hated my colleagues in Customs and Excise. And to get one over them, he got Gordon Brown to believe that there should be a reduced rate. And that's a fact. Now, I think we'll get that out. We'll wheel that out and just say, well, sauce for the goose, sauce for the gander. But for the time being, that's the position we're in. They haven't even considered the case we made to support a small producers rate for spirits producers. They say there's no dogma, but there is dogma, and this is dogmatic. It's a dogmatic reason. The other thing is that I want to mention is that there are reduced rates for producers who are small themselves, so that if you like a small brewer below 8.5, then you can. So supposing you're a small whiskey maker, say, and you made your whiskey and then you converted it into an RTD at, say, 8%, then you would be eligible for a reduced rate because the product is below 8.5. The fly in the ointment is that the statement says that if you're buying in grain neutral spirits, the spirits are already produced, and therefore you're not making it from scratch. Therefore, you're already benefiting from the economies of scale buying from a supplier of grain neutral spirits, or if you say compounded rum to make spiced rum, you're buying in product that's already been made. So how can you benefit from economies of scale because you haven't produced it? Now, the counter to that is, well, no, we haven't produced it, but what about the effort we've got to put in to make, say, re-rectify the heating, energy, all the stuff that goes into it? So they haven't ruled it out that if you like, gin producers from GNS would be eligible. It's just the case will have to be made to say we would be eligible. Or if you made, say, if you made RTDs, you need to think about, could you make an economic case to be part of that small producer to get that release rate below 8.5%. So those are the kind of things that have come out with the latest iteration of the review. Now the timetable for this is for the rates will be next August, 1st of August. It was going to be 1st of February. It's been pushed back. I'm not sure how this will work because the act supporting it will not be in place. And I'm not sure, because these new rates apply, how it will be happen, I'm not sure technically. It may be by resolution of the House somehow on the, some ways and means. It's just occurred to me, how is it going to happen? Just occurred to me this instant. But that's the intention. That will be, so the rates will be in place then. The Act itself, whatever it's going to be called, which will replace the Alcoholic Liquor Duties Act 1979, is a bill. It dismisses a lot of the old stuff in older, which is historic. It's not a bad attempt, but they've rushed it somewhat. But that's why we're going to be having workshops into looking at it. But that will come into effect. Let's have a look. So the things that support, beg your pardon, the things that support the modernisation, if you like, won't take effect until sometime in 2024. So we've got the rates change in 2023, and then the admin to support simplified production regimes will follow that, maybe 6 months, 12 months later, difficult to say at this stage. And that's useful because what's going to happen is that all production regimes, whether you're cider, wine, beer, and spirits production now, will all fall into a single production regime There won't be divergence. So it'll be a lot simpler, particularly for a distiller. It'll be a lot simpler. You won't be in the warehousing regime. You'll be in a separate, discrete regime, just the way you are if you're making beer. You won't have all the hassle and the W1 forms and all the garbage that goes with it, because you won't be in the warehousing regime. And the production regimes, because there are so many of them, they're going to digitalize the lot into one. It's going to be quite a big a task for customs. And I've had a meeting on that with the digitalization team within HMRC, and we just have made contact on that. So life should be a lot easier for a producer. It should bring us into at least into the 20th century, if not the 21st, which is good, because we've worked with regimes that have, basically been put together over a century ago, some of them. So you're looking, really ancient law. Consolidated the 52 Act, for example, was then consolidated the 1709 Act, and then Finance Act subsequently have made different changes. So we need to consolidate, and that's what will happen. So it will be, if not a brave new world, it won't be a timid new world, I think, for us. Is anyone going to look at my notes? Yeah, that's right. I think that's the main stuff. A lot of discussion is about reduced rates, and there's quite a complexity of when you benefit or when you don't benefit, or how you benefit and where you fit in. If you look at the structure of this and the law that's been put in place, it is a lot of it is on these reduced rates, compared to the rest of the bill, which was the Act. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But I think it's pretty, in terms of going forward, and I did say this to HMRC, I applaud the fact they're keeping it on track as best they can, because what's happened in the past is it's been sidelined so often. So I give them credit for that. I think it may be a bit ambitious, and I've told them it may be a bit ambitious, but we will help to make it work and help to get it in place. They think we're responding positively to our positivity to that. Thumbs up, except for the reduced rate for small producers of spirits above 8.5%. So that's that. On another matter, which is really, really important, we had what's called a joint alcohol tobacco consultative group meeting yesterday, which is a high-level meeting between the industry representatives and HMRC and various officials in HMRC and units in HMRC, the policy level. One of the issues that was brought up was on the agenda, that I wanted on the agenda because I've been lobbying for this and bombarding customs with reasons why there must be a change, and that's to WOWGR. That's the Warehousekeepers and Owners of Warehouse Goods Regulations 1999. The issue for spirits industry is that spirits is captured as one of the few products that's subject to be registered as a third-party owner of goods in an excise warehouse, third-party warehouse. So if you want to own spirits in a third-party warehouse, you have to be registered with customs. If you wanted to make, say, RTDs from your own gin and send them to another packer, you'd have to, which is in an excise warehouse, you'd have to be registered to own goods to be deposited in that warehouse. And the problem is that's a really painful process to go through. And customs are applying conditions, so you could only send to certain warehouses, then you had to have the WOWGR approvals added if you needed to go further, which is all unlawful because you should never have unrestricted registrations. And then you have, if you breach that, there are duty points created, and the duty is due on all of the product in that warehouse, and civil penalties of 100% of the duty attached to that. Now that's illegal, and that's for reason I'll go into. It was never legal. And then you've got the situation of trading casks in warehouse. So if you want to buy casks in warehouse, you have to be a registered owner of goods in warehouse. And that's why you get brokers setting up themselves to be registered owners and trading with the beneficial owner that invests in trust. So the beneficial owner, but they don't have to be registered under WOWGR, but that creates opacity. So for all sorts of reasons, I got this looked at and said, look, this law is actually illegal. It's not legitimate because it was never required. It's irrational. It's all over the place. it breaches EU law and retained EU law. So you've got to get rid of it. And customs were working on it over the summer. I did a 60-page submission to them to say this is why it's wrong, this is why it's got to be repealed. Yesterday, customs revealed the results of their review, and the only option that was available really to them is repeal it. Hallelujah.
Hey,
Right.
brilliant news.
So it will be repealed. What customs have said, I'll just read it out, is option 2, revoke all WOWGR legislation so it no longer applies. Benefits, modernizes and simplifies the regime, removes additional costs and burdens from HMRC and business, and saves times with appeals. Well, yeah, it's good. It comes under simplification. Of course it does. But, you know, really, it was because I lobbied, I kept banging the drum on this because it was never legal. And, you know, it can't be sustained. It has no legitimacy. And I was prepared for a judicial review to take it forward and say, I will expose this. I will have this examined by a court, and let's have a look at what they say about it. But anyway, and I said to them, thank you for doing that, because I don't have to judicially review you, but I will if I have to. The point about the issue is also that some of the warehouse keepers at the meeting yesterday, representatives said, well, does it impact, you know, will we be required to do extra work really? And customs said, well, we'll make it fair to you. And one of the warehouse keepers who represented one of the Warehousekeepers Association said, well, it's what we do anyway. We check people out anyway. We don't have to check whether they're registered or not. You don't do it for wine. You don't do it for the fermented products. You don't do it for labelled cider. If you're a warehouse keeper or owner of goods in warehouse that's oil or diesel, you don't need to. You never had to. There's £24 billion at stake in oil and diesel. That was always excluded. So, you know, the Warehousekeeper just has to do the normal things to make sure they're keeping records, who they're dealing with, standard stuff. But, you know, basically, it's a huge, huge burden lifted off the industry to be achieved. So that was good news, and I did celebrate that with a few of the bottles behind me yesterday. If anyone's got any questions on it going forward, then obviously let me know. I've circulated this to British Distillers Alliance as a first off, because there's a lot I need to circulate, but that's a win. So in the last 12 months, I've got rid of premises guarantees, dwell time restrictions on warehouses, qualifying criteria for general storage distribution warehouses. Now we get rid of WOWGR. One more dragon to slay. One more dragon to slay. Duty stamps. Now, the interesting thing about duty stamps, duty stamps falls in the same reason that WOWGR is illegitimate. It was never required. There was no duty for it. At the time, customs used it as a smokescreen to pretend there was fraud because they got the figures wrong. And they doubled down on what was, in fact, was an untruth to Parliament about this. Not only was that, I've good grounds to believe the scheme was never signed off in accordance with the Civil Service Code of Conduct. I won't go into why I know that, but bear in mind I used to work in the department, and I still had friends who worked in the department. I've asked for Freedom Information Papers about that, not forthcoming. You see, if they could refute me, they could find that stuff. They can't find it. If I had a judicial review, they would have to find it, and they would have full disclosure on it. So, you know, it's something that I've got my eye on. It's the last dragon I want to slay. The interesting thing is that the duty stamps legislation in the Alcohol Duties Act 1979 has been carried over as a schedule in the new bill. But because it's a bill that's got to be given assent, it's not like going to have to repeal all of the old law is going to go. This is being a carryover from the old law, but this has got to get assent. Now we've got the opportunity to make the case to HMRC, to the Treasury, to the ministers, that this should go. And the reason it should go is this, and we can actually put pressure on via MPs to the committee stage of the finance bill to ask questions about why is this being brought in when it was never legitimate. Okay, so we've got a good opportunity to make the case now. It's not like we're asking for it to repeal on its own. We're saying this has got to be debated in the House now. So there's a good window of opportunity. If everyone writes to their MP, if everyone gets behind this, we get the publicity, we can get rid of duty stamps. So that's the other window there. And I suspect customs don't really care too much about it anymore. I think they really know it's more trouble than it's worth to monitor duty stamps, because they've never worked and they were never necessary. The people who legislated for the scheme did not believe in it. They knew it wouldn't work. That's why they didn't want to sign it off. But it still got pushed through because senior civil servants did not want to tell Gordon Brown, who was the Chancellor at the time, they'd made a mistake. There was no rule. And they didn't have the moral fibre, the fortitude to actually tell the truth. You know, and this is what happens. The same thing was with WOWGR, incidentally. There was never any fault at that time. It all stopped by 98. So that's really a quick run through of what's been happening, but a lot has been going on.
And amazing work, and we all thank you. You know, you continue to do such great work, and we very much appreciate it. The people can sign up to on the British Distillers Alliance to get the updates, but I know it's important when there are these consultations and that, for people to get involved and actually provide the responses, because it's the responses that really help to move the direction of things. It's no good expecting everyone else to do it. Distillers or anyone that's involved as a stakeholder within this need to have their voice heard, because it's the collective of lots of individual voices that get things shifted, right? To get things changed for the better.
Yes, it's important. I mean, it's really important to get support with things like you know, the finance bill, committee stage of the finance bill, where, you know, the government's got to answer to, you know, their peers to say, well, what's this about? Why are we doing this? If you can persuade them that the case is that this shouldn't be duty stamps, then, you know, there's a prospect they could do that. Sometimes, I mean, you know, whilst I say this, and it's like everything else, if I say I don't believe this should exist, if I believe the law should be built, if I believe the policy is wrong, then I can now engineer a judicial review. You know, it's best if they agree to it, but one can. If something is wrong and irrational, then you can now say a decision made by an officer based upon a policy or a part of a policy that's irrational can be unreasonable, and you can get effectively a judicial review without going through the whole hog of the admin courts and possibly 200 grand in fees. You know, I've done all of this work for nothing, pro bono for the industry, because it's available to do so, and it makes my life easier when I don't have to worry, I have to deal with queries coming in. You know, it's a saving of my. I've spent weeks, months, and time free for the industry, but it's a saving in the long run because I don't get all this stuff coming in. And incidentally, as I say to customs, I could charge a lot more fees than I do. I don't want to earn money on this. It's valueless to people. It's valueless to the taxpayer with money vested in HMA's officers. Rubbish. So, you know, by all means, use resources to do this properly. Help the industry, educate them, and I'd offer educate HMRC because a lot of their officers aren't trained properly. It's evident. But you know, I think we should be looking at we've got a good opportunity with the new act to come to have an easier life, and that's good. And I applaud the department. I applaud those doing, you know, pushing for it, and we want to work with them and give them support on that. But where we think there's rubbish, it's got to go, really got to go.
Well, quite right too. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm now going to hand over to ourselves in the future, and hopefully we'll be able to take questions and answers. But and so over to us in the future.